everyone, this is Charlie from the Bloomingdale Public Library, and today we're going to be talking about Microsoft Paint 3D. What is Microsoft Paint 3D? Well, it's a very basic image editor and 3D modeling application. In case you've seen any of my Blender videos, it is nothing like that. It is far more simple and beginner friendly. It is packaged with Windows 10 as of the Creators Update back in 2017, an update which included other related applications like View 3D and Mixed Reality Portal, representing Microsoft's push to get into the 3D space, since which they have pulled back quite a bit. Paint 3D was intended to replace Paint, but this plan was canceled in response to public backlash. Basically, people love their Paint and have been using it as far back as the 80s, and they didn't like the idea of it losing its very simple functionality. If you don't have Paint 3D on your Windows system already, you can find it on the Windows Store. At least you can until November 4th, 2024, after which it will be removed and official support will end. This news came just before I started recording this video, but I thought it was a video still worth recording because it is a nifty little program and a pretty good introduction into using 3D modeling. To get started using Paint 3D, the first thing we need to do is see if we already have it. To do that, we're going to check the app list. I'm on a Windows 11 laptop, so if you're using Windows 10, obviously things are going to look a little different. So it's actually listed as Paint 3D, which will be under P. And there it is, Paint 3D, and the icon for it is this colorful little raindrop. If you don't see it there, what you can do instead is go under M. You find the Microsoft Store. Go ahead and click on that. Do a search for Paint 3D. Click Get, click Open, and you're good to go. Obviously, you're going to need an internet connection in order to visit the store, which I don't have right now, so I'm going to just go ahead and go back down to Paint 3D and open that. When you open Paint 3D, you're going to start on the Welcome screen. From the Welcome screen, you can either create a new project from scratch, open an existing project, or create a new project from whatever is in your clipboard. If you didn't know, the clipboard is where things go when you cut or copy something. So you can either start from a 2D or a 3D file. So for 2D, you're looking at BMPs, JPEGs, etc. It's pretty good about accepting most of the major file types. If you have a 3D object in your clipboard, it's OBJ, STL, and a couple of others. If you didn't want to see the screen the next time you open the app, you can uncheck the box here. If you want to bring it back later, you can do so in the settings. I'm going to leave that selected for now. And I'm going to click New to create a new project. So it's a pretty simple interface, and we'll be able to look at pretty much everything. You'll also notice there is a warning about the Paint 3D application being unavailable in the store and not receiving future updates. I actually don't get this warning on my desktop version, so you may or may not see that. Of note, we have the menu icon in the top left. If you click on that, it's basically like the file menu in most Microsoft applications. So from here you can start a new project, open an existing project, insert an image or 3D object from somewhere else, save as. We're going to actually look at those a little bit later. Print your project, share your project, and down at the bottom we have settings, which, just to look at those really briefly, there's not a whole lot of them. So compact view will change the look of things in just a bit in case you have a smaller screen. Show perspective, I don't think it actually works, but there's a toggle to turn that on and off. Here's the toggle for the welcome screen on and off. And below all that is a slider for the display quality. So I do not believe this actually changes the product of whatever you're creating, but it will change how good it looks on your screen. If you increase the slider, you also get another toggle for smoothing out textures on 3D objects. I'm going to leave this all bottomed out for the moment. Going back, just a quick brief look at the interface. We've got our categories for tools up at the top here. Also on the far right, we've got the paste, undo, redo as well as the history options. Below all that, we have some selection options, 3D view and zoom options, as well as a couple of options under this ellipsis. Again, we'll look at all that later. Oops. In the middle is our canvas, and on the right is where we see all of our various tools and tool options based on which category we currently have selected. So with all that under our belt, let's go ahead and see what we can do. Alright, so let's have a look at the tools here. I'm just going to start with brushes at the top and go from left to right. So with brushes selected, if we look at the panel here, we've got our stroke styles at the top, a thickness slider, and maybe an opacity slider below that, depending on the stroke style. And then at the bottom we have our color options. So by default we've got the marker selected. If I click, drag, and release, we get a basic stroke. If I were to say choose the oil brush here, click and drag, you can see it's very, very different. I'll let you experiment with the rest on your own. I'm going to go back to the marker. If you want to adjust the thickness, you can go ahead and move the slider and change things that way, or you can click in the field and type a number in to be more precise. Like I said, some strokes have an opacity slider. You might have noticed the oil brush did not. If you lower the opacity, whatever is behind the stroke will show through. In this case, it's a white background, so the stroke just appears a little lighter. Below the sliders, we have a drop-down menu, and these all show various levels of metallicity. Besides the matte, nothing else is going to show up unless you're using 3D objects, so I'm going to skip that for now. Below the drop-down, you've got your current color selected. Just click on that and you can change it. Hit OK, start drawing. And next to that we have a dropper. If you click on that, you can put the crosshair over a color that's already on your canvas. Click on that and it will reset your current color. You can also choose from the colors that are in the palette below. Just click on it and draw. You can also permanently add your own colors by clicking Add Color, picking your color, and hitting OK. That will add a colored square to this little bar at the bottom. You can have up to 6 custom colors. However, I do not know how to delete these without actually resetting the app in the app listing by right-clicking and going to the settings, so I'm not going to do that right now. You can edit your custom colors, however, by right-clicking on it, and it'll bring you back to this window. Just a few of the styles I want to go over in particular. One is the eraser, which of course doesn't so much create a stroke as it removes the strokes that are already there. And I'm going to use the spray can here to draw a circle real quick and then show our fill tool. Now the fill tool will turn whatever shape you point at into the color that is currently selected. So let's go ahead and select a more unique color here. Put the crosshair over this white circle, click on it, and it's probably not the results you wanted. So if you find that you have a fuzzy border and you're selecting too much with the fill tool, I'm going to go ahead and hit undo here. What you do is you lower the tolerance, try again, and as you can see, we are a lot more contained than we were before. If you have the opposite problem, of course you can increase the tolerance and get different results. I'm going to choose a bolder color here. Just to jump ahead, I'm going to create a 3D shape. I'm going to tip it a little bit so we can see the bottom. Come back to brushes and choose another unique color. So you'll notice our fill tool also has its own drop down. If I click on that, all of these options are for 3D shapes. If I click all, it's going to paint the whole shape. Undo that. If I choose side, it's just going to paint the side. And you'll notice this has a tolerance. That's for if your side is curved. Undo that. The final option is angle here, which also has its own slider. And just to demonstrate why, if I click somewhere on this curved surface here, you see it covers a certain angle of that surface. I'm going to undo that. I'll choose a smaller angle. Click on it. As you can see, it is more restricted. It's kind of like we're lowering the tolerance. Undo that. Choose a bigger number. Click on it, and we basically did the whole thing again. If we go back to our marker here, again, choose a more unique color. If your crosshair is over the canvas and you start drawing, it's only going to draw on the canvas. As you can see, it does not draw on our 3D shape. At the same time, if you put the crosshair over the shape and start drawing, it's only going to draw on the shape, not the canvas. So with that, I think we've got a pretty good coverage on the brush tools. Alright, let's go ahead and have a look at 2D shapes. So with 2D shapes selected, we'll have a look at the panel on the right here. You can see we've got two categories, line and curve and 2D shapes. Let's go ahead and start with line and curve. And I'm actually going to select the one all the way on the right here, the 5-point curve. With that selected, I'm going to click and drag on the canvas here. As you can see, when I do, I'm basically controlling one of the corners of an invisible rectangle. When I let go, we can see that rectangle. There's a couple things we can do here. When my cursor is somewhere over this rectangle here, you notice I have the 4-arrow crosshair. If I click and drag while that's visible, it means I can move the shape. If I put that crosshair directly over one of the nodes on the line, instead of moving the shape, we just move the node, and the line kind of adjusts. We don't have quite as much control as we would in an application like Inkscape or Illustrator, but we do have some. The reason we can't do as much as we would in those other applications is because we don't have access to the Bezier handles. Nonetheless, we can still do a little something, and now we can move our mouse cursor over the handles on the rectangle. So if you do it on one of the handles on the sides, you can adjust one of the dimensions at a time. If you put it over one of the handles on the corners, you can adjust the height and the width at the same time. You'll also notice there is an icon on the left and right side of the rectangle. The one on the left is a stamp. You can see what the tooltip there says, but basically it lets you apply the image to the canvas while still giving you control over the image. So if I click stamp, you see I stamped an M on the canvas, but I still have control over my shape here. So I can change the size of it, stamp it again, boom. There's a couple other things we can do with this guy. If we look at the panel over on the right side here, we can give it another color, we can give it some thickness, adjust the opacity, adjust the matte, which again doesn't make sense with our 2D object. We can make it 3D. We can also rotate 90 degrees at a time or flip about the X and Y axes. Keep in mind, if you flip about the Y axes, it also flips the icons. So I'm going to put the opacity all the way back up. Move it into the middle here, make it a little bit bigger. And we'll see what happens when we make it 3D. Alright, well the first thing it did was kind of disappear. This kind of confused me at first, but what actually happens is it got put behind the canvas for some reason. So to adjust the position on the Z-axis, it's this icon right here. So if I click and drag on that, it's kind of hard to see what's going on, but I'm basically moving the shape forward and backward. So like towards the screen and away from the screen. So once I pull it in front of the canvas, now we can see it. The other axes control rotation about all three axes. The top one is for the z-axis. The right one is for the x-axis. And the bottom one is for the y-axis. So when you do this, the shape is no longer on the canvas, it's in a 3D space. And just as a little preview of what we're going to be looking at eventually, I'm going to put it in the 3D view mode, and when I rotate it around, you can see it is very clearly not on the canvas. So if you wanted to get that to show up on a printout or something, you'd have to do a screenshot instead. But moving on with 2D shapes, I'm going to click on 2D shapes, and now we'll look at the 2D shapes in the right panel, and we'll go ahead and choose the star. When I do that, I'm going to click and drag to draw the star, and it basically behaves just like the point and curves. The only real difference is we don't have any nodes to adjust, which is kind of unusual since the star does have a couple points we could mess around with. But it does have a fill and line type as well as colors. So for fill, if I click on the square here, we can choose a fill color, and you see it changes the type to solid. We can still go to none if we want. The line type, again, we can choose the color and whether or not we want none or not. And everything is otherwise the same. In fact, we'll go ahead and make it 3D. Why not? You can have it so it's like halfway showing in the canvas there. I'm sure there's reasons to do that, but there you go. And that is goofing around with 2D shapes. Alright, next up is 3D shapes. With 3D shapes selected, having a look at the panel on the right here. Now if I had a connection to the internet, you'd see a link to the 3D library at the top. And even though I don't, there's still a link to the 3D library up in the list of tools here, but if I click on it, it says service unavailable. If you do have Paint 3D and a connection to the internet, I'd recommend floating through their 3D library as it's fairly extensive and the quality of the models is pretty good, and you can go ahead and use those models in your art. With that said, we're going to move on. We're going to skip 3D Doodle for now and instead move on to the 3D objects, and I'm going to go with a tube. So I've got red for my color and polished metal for my material. I'm going to click and drag and release, and sure enough, when I do that, that polished metal effect comes through pretty well. As far as the icons around our object are concerned, we've already seen those from when we converted our 2D shapes into 3D objects. Just to go back over, the icon on the left is for moving along the Z-axis or for moving towards and away from the screen. The icon on the top here is for rotating on the Z-axis. The icon on the right is for the X-axis. And the icon at the bottom is for the Y-axis. We also have a rectangle around our object, just like we did with the 2D shapes. And even though it's not a moving dashed line, it acts pretty much the same. So if you click and drag on one of the handles on the sides, it'll change the height and the width dimensions. And if you click on one of the handles on the corners and drag, you adjust the height and the width at the same time, but it is going to keep the ratio intact. At the same time, if you have that 4 arrow crosshair, you can click and drag to move the object. I'm going to go ahead and leave that guy alone for now, and I think this is a good time to go over the 3D navigation. So to navigate in 3D, you click on 3D view, and when you do that, you get this isometric view, and we got way off center. So rather than explain to you what the controls are, I'm going to click on the ellipsis over on the right here and click on Show Interaction Controls, and that will bring up the controls in the lower left here. Now if you're using a touchpad or a pen or a keyboard, all the instructions are there, but I'm using a mouse. So for the mouse, you use the right mouse key, hold it down to orbit. You use the scroll button by holding it down to pan. You can always use the Alt and left mouse button, but I use the scroll wheel. And then you can move the scroll wheel up and down in order to zoom in and out. So orbiting does not work if you are on an object. As you see, if I right click and hold, it doesn't do anything. In fact, when you release, it brings up a menu of other options you can use. But otherwise, I'm going to get out of 3D view for now and move on to other 3D shapes. We're going to come back to 3D Doodle now. So I'm going to start off with the tube brush here. If I click on the shape of the tube, you see we've got a bunch of options here. I'm going to leave it on capsule for now. You can adjust the thickness if you like. I'm going to leave that too. And then taper. You can have a taper at the beginning or the end or not at all. Again, that's up to you. And once you've got everything all set, just click and drag and start drawing. You'll notice as you draw, there's like a little clock that slowly counts down. And you can either keep drawing until the clock runs out, or you can release ahead of time. It doesn't matter. Once you release, it's just like before with the points and lines where you can click and drag the nose around. However, initially you can only draw in 2D. You can draw multiple lines and you get a new clock for each one, but there isn't a way to connect them, at least not that I'm aware of. If you're done drawing a line or you wanted to go back, you can click on this little icon here and it'll bring the dots back, but as you can see, you can't have the dots showing for more than one tube at a time, which is what keeps you from connecting them. So once you're happy with your 3D doodle, you can hit the check mark. Otherwise, if you wanted to go 3D with it, you click 3D view and you can move your nodes in 3D. You are restricted to the X, Y, and Z axes as you move. But still, you can just get your nodes to where you want them by moving one axis at a time. So now, when we move around, you see our 3D doodle is very three-dimensional. Other 3D doodles, we have the soft edge, where you basically just draw a shape, connect it, and it makes a shape with a soft edge. There's the edge there. Going back to 3D shapes, choose the hard edge or the sharp edge, and it's the same thing. Oops. Except the edge is sharp. So now we've got all of these shapes here. As soon as you're done creating a 3D object, it puts you in the 3D selection panel. So let's go ahead and see what we can do here. We can edit the color. Piece of cake. We can choose select all, which selects everything at once, or multi-select. If you click multi-select, you can select objects one at a time with your mouse. Incidentally, just as you might suspect, you can also select an object and then hold down the Shift key to continue controlling or selecting objects one at a time, rather. Once you have multiple objects selected, you can group them. So now, when you select any single object, they're all selected at once. They're considered a part of the same object. And when you do that, you can edit their colors and rotations and all that all at the same time. Very fancy. When you're all done treating everything as a group, if that time ever comes, you can ungroup them and they're back to behaving as single objects. Last group here is 3D models. These are basically just a handful of the models that you would see in the 3D library. You have people, fish, dog, and cat. So if I click and drag a dog, this is what we get there. Like I said, the models are pretty good, but otherwise it acts just like any of the other 3D shapes. So now that you know how to create 3D objects and move around a 3D space, you can go back to the brushes and try drawing on things. So if you were like doing some kind of details, like adding rust or dirt to something, this might be a way to go about it. Otherwise, what you probably want to do is use stickers, which is what we're going to look at next. Alright, now we're going to talk about stickers. Stickers are just 2D images that we can use in our project. We can apply them to the canvas or to 3D objects, or turn them into 3D objects. With stickers selected at the top, we come over to the panel on the right here, and you see we have 3 tabs. We have a collection of provided stickers. Honestly, it's not particularly impressive. We have a collection of textures, which they're decent textures, but there's only 8 of them. And the final tab is for custom stickers, which you can either add one by searching your computer for images to import. You just find it, select it, click open. Or you can create your own stickers within Paint 3D, which is what we're actually going to do a little bit later. To demonstrate a sticker, let's go to the first tab here, find a sticker you like, click somewhere in the workspace here, and you can do most of the things you do with 2D shapes. Drag it around, you can resize the height and the width. For some reason, the corner handles only do height and width while maintaining ratio. You can also rotate. We have some flip and rotate options over on the right, and we also have a sticker opacity. We'll leave it on full. Once you have your sticker how you like it, click the stamp to put it down. Or you can click the check mark to commit. And there you go. Jump over to the second tab. We'll pick out a texture. We've got the hedge here. Again, you click somewhere in the workspace, find where you want your hedge. You can stamp it. And you see it's better for covering a surface or covering a space. Once you're done, go ahead and hit the check mark, or you can hit escape. And last but not least, we're going to create our own sticker. So to do that, I'm going to go to brushes, and I'm just going to draw a lightning bolt here. Pew! Awesome. We'll even paint it in. There we go. Now I'm going to use the select tool over in the top left. Draw a rectangle. And you see over on the right side here we have make sticker. I'm just going to click on that. And now if you hit escape, you see we have our lightning bolt sticker in the custom sticker tab. Now you might not like all that extra white, and that's okay. We can create a sticker without the extra white. Again, I'm going to go to brushes here, and I'll draw another lightning bolt. Suppose I could have stickered the one I already made. That's okay though. Instead of the select tool, I'm going to use the magic select. And what magic select does is it tries to figure out what you want to pull out, mostly going through contiguous colors. If you look over on the right side here, they have a little demonstration step by step. So first thing you do is you use the handles to kind of zero in on what you want to select. Then you hit next, and then you'll see a blue highlight around what it's magically selecting. Now if it doesn't select exactly what you want, as you can see through the demonstration here, you kind of draw on what you want with the add toggle selected, And if there's something you don't want selected, you click the remove toggle and scribble on what you don't want selected. Perhaps I'll demonstrate that a bit with the text tool later. But since we've got our lightning bolt all pulled out there, I'm going to hit done. And then I'm going to click make sticker, because what actually happened is the Magic Select pulled this out and turned it into a 3D object. If I hit 3D view, you see the lightning bolt is actually pulled off of the canvas. So I'm going to click make sticker, hit escape, and now we have my lightning bolt without a background. So I'm going to go ahead and create a 3D shape and apply some stickers to a 3D shape here. We'll create a cat and we'll make them polished metal blue. Why not? There we go. All right. So we're going to go to the front view here. We're going to go into stickers and we'll give them some eyes. And as you can see, it was not nearly the right scale, so we move it around. Stamp. Oops. Stamp. Escape. And I could take the time to give him a mouth, but I won't. We will, however, give him a tattoo. Then go to my custom stickers here. Select my lightning bolt. Size it down a bit. Awesome. And that is a bit of working with stickers. Alright, next we'll talk about text real quick. There's honestly not too much to go over here, so I'm going to use that to also better demonstrate the Magic Select tool. So with text selected, we come over to the panel on the right side, and it's pretty bare. At the top we have two options. There's 2D text and 3D text. I'm going to do 2D text first, and 2D text can only go onto the canvas. If you wanted to put it on a 3D object, you'd have to go about making it into a sticker. I'm going to make the text red. Otherwise, I think you've seen all of these other options around before. If you choose background fill, this will be a rectangle that contains the text, but since I want to do the Magic Select tool, I'm not going to use that right now. So you simply click on where you want to apply your text and start typing. If you put the cursor over the edges, you see you get the 4-arrow crosshair, so you can move it around a bit. And you have the rotation icon there as well. Otherwise, once you're all set, just click outside of the rectangle, and it's like committing the text to the canvas. So let's go ahead and pull that cat out and turn it into a sticker. I'm going to go to Magic Select, and I'm going to adjust the handles to go as close to the cat as I can. And once I'm all set, hit next. That actually did a pretty good job. To add and subtract from the Magic Select, I'm going to zoom way in so we can be pixel perfect. Alright, I don't need to add anything just yet, so I'm going to click on remove and just start drawing lines around what we don't want. And see, once I did that, I lost the C altogether. So we'll have to come back to that. Oop, I lost the T too. We'll go to add. Remove. Alright, that's pretty good. I think you get the point. So once you're all set, click done. You can go ahead and make that sticker. Hit escape here. You see it kind of tried to pull the cat out and put the texture back. It did a pretty good job, I suppose, and if I zoom out, you'll hardly notice. Go ahead and put that cat where it belongs, right on the cat here. And that is working with 2D text. I'm going to go back to the text tool. We'll make some 3D text here. So I'm going to click the 3D text, click somewhere in space, start typing. Again, when you're all set, click outside. And now we have the 3D rectangle and icons to work with. So if I start rotating things around, you can see it is in fact 3D. And that is working with 2D and 3D text. Alright, next we're going to take a quick look at effects. And I say quick because there's only two options here. So with effects selected, we come over to the panel on the right, and you see we've got filter effects and a light wheel. I'm just going to go ahead and choose one of the more extreme filters here. This is the night in Minecraft, I guess. And now when I rotate the sun in the light wheel, you see the light source changes. And the way it's picked up by the polished metal material on the cat is kind of cool. We'll have a look at another one here. This is the Minecraft Nether. Minecraft is indirectly owned by Microsoft, so maybe there is some truth to how this filter works, but once again, the color filter is very apparent, and moving the sun around changes the light source. That's all there is to that. Very neat, but I'm going to put things back to default for now and move on to our canvas options. Now for the people that use Paint the way I do, this would probably be where they would gravitate towards if they were stuck using Paint 3D. We do have a couple of 3D options at the top here, and these are toggles. The first one is to show the canvas or not. So if you were just working on a 3D object and not worrying about the background, that would be something that might be helpful. Perhaps the canvas gets in the way when you're trying to paint your 3D object. So there's that. And then there's transparent canvas, which will still show anything that you drew on it. That's what that looks like. You can see my lightning bolt is showing through from when I made a sticker. That is because when I used Magic Select, there is an option for filling in the background. So I had this autofill background selected for the cat, so that's why the cat got filled in, but I did not have it selected when I created my lightning bolt, and that's why it kind of shows through now. Something to keep in mind, but for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn that transparent canvas off anyway. So below that, these are the options I was primarily talking about. We've got resizing the canvas width and height. So if I were to change the height to 800, you see the width changes in proportion because we've got the lock aspect ratio selected. I'm going to undo that change. And if I undo the lock aspect ratio, set the height to 100, now everything gets stretched out. I'm going to undo that one more time, and this time I'm going to unselect the resize image with canvas. When I do that, again, set the height to 800 pixels. We get a bigger canvas, but the image does not stretch with it. So that's what those toggles do. I'm going to undo that and check these back. Below that, we've got a drop down for pixels or percent, just like we have in Paint, and we also have options for flipping and rotating as well. So that is our canvas options. 3D library, like I already said, I don't have access to without an internet access, but I highly recommend going through that just to see what's there. There's quite a bit. And from there, we're going to come down to the select tool, which I did not go through yet. It's pretty straightforward. When you're not in 3D mode, you're just selecting what's on the canvas. So you create a selection rectangle, and you've got a whole bunch of familiar options here. Incidentally, if you go to the crop tool while something is still selected, it will crop to the selection, which is not what we want to do right now. So I'm going to undo that and instead click the crop tool without a selection, and that gives us the handles. So here you can go ahead and move the handles around to create your crop selection. If you like, you can go to the panel here and you have a lot of the common ratios already selected for you, so you can select the ratio and start moving your handles around and it will maintain that ratio. Otherwise, you can choose custom and then you're free to do whatever you want. You can also make your crop selection by pixels if you know a specific set of dimensions that you need. Perhaps you have a web page that you need a specific set of dimensions for. You can lock those if you like. Once you have your crop all set, just go ahead and hit done, and that'll crop it for you. So that there is a whole bunch of what was left. Now we're going to have a look at putting out our final product. When you're all set to save a final product, there's a couple of ways to go about it depending on what you want. Probably the quickest way to spit out a 2D image is to go to the ellipsis in the upper right corner here and click Take Screenshot. Here you just give the file a name, choose a file type. These are all popular 2D file types. Click Save. And you're not even removed from the workspace. You can just continue working. Just to see what that gave us, I'm going to go ahead and open it in Paint. And there you go. And again, even though there's 3D objects in this project, what we have here is solely a 2D image. There's no 3D dimension to this. All right, this time we're going to go to the menu options in the top left corner. Click Save As, and here we have a couple of options. Paint 3D Project is just a way to save it if you want to come back to it later. I don't think any other applications open Paint 3D projects. I'm going to choose Image again, and when I do, there are a whole bunch of options here. I'm going to go ahead and click Adjust Angle and Framing, and here we can go into 3D View and make it so you can see his eyes, zoom in a bit, center them. You can set your dimensions, width and height, and you can choose the standard ratios as well if you like. When you got everything the way you like, click OK. That'll take us back here where you can choose the file type, choose new dimensions, and when you're good, click Save. Give it a name. Again, you can choose the file type. It's the same as it was in the upper right corner. Click Save. That's it. Again, just to see what we've got here, I'm going to open it in Paint. And there you go. All right, back to the menu, Save As. This time we're going to go to 3D Model. This will save our product as a 3D model. We're going to give it a name. And for file types, we have GLB and 3MF. I admit I have not seen these file types before. And just doing a quick bit of research in Blender, you can import and export GLBs, but not 3MFs. So that would be the way I would probably opt to go. Click Save. And that's all there is to that. Back up to Menu, Save As. I'm going to click Video this time. And as you can see, Paint 3D has provided some animations for our product here. You'll notice that the canvas actually has images on both sides. So again, we can choose the file type here. As far as videos go, you have MP4 and GIF. I don't think you can use a GIF if your animation is too long. Again, you can choose your width, your height, adjust if you're doing in pixels or percent. I'm going to leave that alone for now. Animations, you can have a look at what they all do. So we started with turntable. Swing just goes back and forth. Jump and turn actually does a little bit of deformation. Wobble, emerge, and hover. I'm going to leave it on hover. We've got a slider for the speed multiplier and for the number of loops. Put everything way down. And when you have it the way you like it, just go ahead and click Save. And now you'll have a video. I'm actually going to cancel out of this though. Cancel again. One more kind of unique thing you can do is actually create a stop motion animation with the history. Allow me to explain. If we go up to the top right corner here in the workspace and click history, the history is actually shown as a slider and not individual steps as you typically see. I'm not sure how much I like that. But as far as creating an animation goes, what you do is toggle on start recording, and now each step of your editing is counted as a frame for your animation. So just to make it really simple here, I'm going to select the cat and I'm going to move him around a bit. So this animation is going to be rather bland, but I think you'll get the point. So I'm all done. I'm going to go to history, export as video, give it a name, file type. Only have the one option there. I believe that's still an MP4. Save it and play it. Not very impressive, but I think you can see there's a lot of potential for some creativity there. And with that, I think we're done for today. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something. I hope you still have a chance to go ahead and download and at least try Paint 3D out. And I hope you have a good day.